On final at Tokyo Narita's airport, Fedex Flight 80 attempts to land at runway 34 left, but a series of bounces later ends in burning flames as the aircraft tumbles across the runway. A supposedly normal landing turned inferno, how did Flight 80 go so horribly wrong? March 2009. On the ground on Guangzhou, China, Fedex Flight 80 is loading cargo for its next flight. The aircraft being used for Flight 80 is a 15-year-old McDonnell Douglas MD-11 registered as November 526 Foxtrot Echo. Originally built as a passenger MD-11, at first used by NASA before operating for Delta between 1996 to 2004. After Delta retired their MD-11 fleet in 2004, it was acquired by FedEx and converted to a cargo MD-11 and put back into service by late 2005. The pilots on board Flight 80 were 54-year-old Captain Kevin Mosley, who had around 12,800 flight hours and worked as a former US Marine fighter pilot, and 49-year-old First Officer Anthony Stephen Pino, who had around 6,300 total flight hours. They were both the only occupants on board Flight 80. On March 23, 2009, around 2 to 2:30 a.m., FedEx Flight 80 took off from Guangzhou Baiyun International Airport in Guangzhou, China. The flight all the way till approach was relatively normal at the time. Around 6:41 a.m., Flight 80 was 13 nautical miles away from Narita Airport. At around the same time, they established contact with Narita Tower as they were descending to 1,000 feet. Tower informed FedEx Flight 80 that the weather conditions around runway 34 left had a tailwind of 28 knots. Narita Tower gave Flight 80 landing clearance at 6:46 a.m. They passed 45 feet a minute later at 6:47 as they went into final on runway 34 left. At 6:41:03, the pilots turned off the autopilot and switched to manual control. Around the same time, they passed 100 feet and began to fly over the runway threshold. The plane's right landing gear touched down, and then the rest of the middle landing gears also touched down. Immediately after, a second later, the plane's spoilers deployed, but from the force of the first touchdown, the plane bounced and climbed to around 10 feet. They then proceeded to descend down before touching down nose gear first only a second later at 6:48:22. On the second touchdown, the plane went down nose first before the main gears. They bounced again, managing to reach a maximum altitude of 16 feet. After the second bounce, the plane pitched up around 6.7 degrees up as they attempted a third touchdown. On their third touchdown, Flight 80 landed nose gear first again. They touched down on their main landing gear next and proceeded to yaw right upon touchdown. But the force and stress of the plane's weight was too much, so moments after the third touchdown, the force went up the left main gear into the wing, causing it to break and ignite fuel along the process. The fire and the collapse of the left wing caused the plane to roll over to the left until they went fully inverted. The winds in Narita Airport were enough to cause the fire to grow stronger, engulfing the entire MD-11 in flames. The fire had spread all throughout the plane, with it nearly taking 2 hours for firefighters to fully extinguish the fire. Both pilots were trapped in the plane before they were airlifted to the nearby Japanese Red Cross hospital near Narita, but by that point they were too injured and later declared dead. After the crash, runway 34 left 16 right was closed for several hours as they tried to remove the wreckage and the debris. Narita's second runway, runway 16 left 34 right, which was shorter than the closed runway, had to be used for the time being. The second runway was however too short for certain planes, so they had to be redirected to nearby airports like Tokyo Haneda. The investigation into Flight 80's crash was led with investigators from Japan's Transport Safety Board and the United States National Transportation Safety Board. From their findings, during the approach, the plane fell into a series of porpoising oscillations, which is a phenomenon where the plane was rising and banking, i.e., the plane was bouncing on landing at runway 34 left. The cause was mainly found to be from pilot error, mainly from the pilots pushing the nose down and pushing the elevator up each bounce during their touchdowns, increasing in magnitude as the plane continued to bounce until the stresses and forces were too much for the left wing to handle, causing it to break and cause a structural failure. Both pilots were also exhibiting lack of sleep and fatigue throughout the flight, with records and accounts from layover hotel staff and other activities done by pilots while they were in Guangzhou showed that the pilots had less than 4 hours of consecutive sleep 24 hours before the crash at Narita. It's also likely that had the fuse pin in the left gear support structure failed and caused the gear to fall off and collapse, the load and damage wouldn't have been bad enough that the left wing and its fuel tanks wouldn't have been damaged enough for the fire to spread so rapidly. Add to that, the pilot's autothrottle was active during the landings, which led to the airspeed fluctuating along with the strong winds from runway 32 left. Along with that, First Officer Pino, who was piloting Flight 80, was mainly a relief pilot, so he had little experience in landing the MD-11. The JTSB published their final report on April 26, 2013, over 4 years after the crash. They recommended that Boeing, who had merged with McDonnell Douglas back in 1997, should improve the LSAS, or Longitudinal Stability Augmentation System, and reduce the delay of the plane's spoilers deploying. The improvements were mainly to limit the nose-down elevator inputs during touchdown, considering how common hard landing cases like this happen with the MD-11, to help our pilots recover in cases of a bounce during landing. And considering for FedEx, this is the second time an accident like this has occurred with an MD-11. The first being Fedex Flight 14, an accident with very similar circumstances to Flight 80 that happened in July 31st, 1997 at Newark Airport in Newark, New Jersey. These two accidents being so similar in many avenues, down to the bounce landing leading to an inversion of the aircraft led to the aforementioned safety changes, especially with the MD-11 to prevent future accidents like these from happening in the future. Hey guys, so hope you enjoyed the video, and sorry if this was a bit rushed. I was sick for most of the production of this video, but hopefully the next one shouldn't take that long because I don't actually plan to animate the next one, so anyways, that's it for now. Hope you enjoy. Bye!